Okay, let me start. So, thank you for tuning in. Tonight we are going to discuss the founding manifesto of Us the People. But because the founding manifesto is it's 40 pages and 6 chapters, today we'll only discuss the preamble, the important terms which you need to understand to get the manifesto clearly, as well as the introduction to the manifesto. Then there have been some questions which have been sent before by some comrades who had read the manifesto before. But before I go into the manifesto, let me start by giving a brief background of the formation of the movement, which is Us the People. Well, Us the People was formed on 25 January 2020 in Braamfontein, where we had students, workers, activists, and experts from various fields who came together to discuss in the founding summit of Us the People. And the founding summit was quite historical because it signified a turning point in all efforts to strengthen the oppressed and exploited in the face of capital. So obviously, Us the People was established as the only organization in South Africa, the only political organization that identifies the state as its primary enemy. And we also seek to destroy the state because we do not intend to replace one oppression by another. Instead, we want to offer young people a new way of thinking, which is quite necessary to build a new society, which is quite necessary as well to oppose the state, to oppose monopoly capitalism, and to oppose all forms of oppression and exploitation. So at the founding summit, we had activists deliberating on key issues, pertinent issues that relate to the struggle and freedom in general. So we saw and resolved that we needed to organize society and provide an alternative way of thinking. So this alternative way of thinking will be the one that lays a basis for the new social order that we desire as the people. So As the People is a political party that is registered with the Independent Electoral Commission and will be contesting elections in all spheres of government. So I think it is quite clear now that our organization is the only futuristic organization with a futuristic outlook. I think we even saw today we were leading and were followed in terms of the administration of our organization. We do not keep paper. Our members join us online, whether you join Us the People, as the students, or as the workers. You join online, and we saw even some political parties trying to introduce online membership. So As the People is the only organization with a futuristic outlook, and when we go further into the manifesto, we'll be able to get to explain clearly how we can be able to take advantage of technology to advance freedom in our society. So as a generation, we saw that we ought to oppose 19th and 20th century ideologies in our quest for equality and socialism. These are ideologies that I speak of. I speak of ideologies of the 19th and 20th century, which have been used in previous struggles for freedom. However, as the people, we shall not wait for an idol. Instead, we shall liberate ourselves, because we have no one but ourselves. We entirely have no intentions of betraying future generations That is why we took this responsibility to say that we will go out and educate society in institutions of higher learning, in communities and in workplaces, as the people has taken that responsibility to educate members of society about an alternative way of thinking and organizing ourselves. So obviously, as the people organizes in communities, as the students organize in universities, and as the workers organize in workplaces. So that is a brief explanation of the formation of the movement. And of course, at the founding summit, national task teams were established for us the people and us the students. So of course, the leader of us the people is Matole, which is also known as Musholozi. And the leader of us, the students, is Tabang Madito, who is from Free State. So, of course, the national task teams are also capacitated with other brilliant minds who come from various areas in the country and who contribute to the movement in various ways, because our organization is not a vertical hierarchical organization. However, our leadership is responsibility based, and according to the strengths of our members and according to their expertise, we'll be able to know which member will be able to serve best. So before I get into the founding manifesto, right, today we are going to discuss only 3 sections out of the 6 chapters. So obviously the founding manifesto was adopted by us, the people, us, the students and the workers on the 25th of January. And the manifesto starts with the as like the name of the organization says, it's us, the people. So it opens with a quote from Robert Sobukwe, which says, the Africanists take the view that there is only one race to which we all belong, which is the human race. So this is a very significant quote. If you look at the name of our organization, as well as the principles of our organization, you will understand that this quote is quite significant. As people, we do not take the narrow identity politics that want to identify people as men, as women, as black, as white, as rich or poor, but we identify ourselves as the people. So the founding manifesto has quite an interesting preamble, which gives context as to where we are today in South Africa and where we come from, as well as where we should go. So of course, since the inception of human life on earth, human beings have strived to achieve freedom, and this has given rise to liberation currents throughout history, as well as struggles for individual freedom. This has remained important because many people are of the view that humans are inherently capitalist and greedy, which if you go through the manifesto, you'll understand that the opposite is true. So such views have been maintained by historical institutions of dominations, which started with the monarchs, even before the monarchs, the feudal system, then the monarchs, then to slavery. In South Africa, we even had apartheid before we had this modern day neoliberal state, right? So according to us, as stated in the preamble, the principle and fact of government gave rise to misery among human beings. However, this thing only happens because humans allow to surrender our lives and our livelihoods to so-called leaders. So, of course, there have been laws that have been created historically, and these laws in any epoch, they've been enforced by terror, and this enforcement has only served to protect the privilege of the ruling minority at the expense of the majority. Like if you look at now in the country during this COVID-19 lockdown, there are laws that are being enforced, right, by the state, the gang of the state, which is the police and the army. They are enforcing the laws. But if you look at the laws, the enforcement is only to protect the privilege of the ruling minority. And this happens obviously at the expense of all the poor masses. I mean, people even lost their lives in the name of enforcement of lockdown regulations. So that is one factor that has always been there, that natural customs that are supposed to be beneficial for us as humans have been replaced by laws, and these laws cannot be justified. That's why they use violence to enforce these laws. So since the colonialists landed in Africa, we know that the colonization in Africa did not just take place as a single event. However, it took some time, and during that time we saw Africans participating in resistance struggles. Resistance struggles do not start in the 20th century when people were saying they are fighting for freedom, but there were even dynasties in Africa that fought against the colonialists, and most of them even defeated the colonialists until the colonialists went back to strategize, and instead of now coming with violence, they came with other means to coerce society to follow them. So of course various social systems have been applied. I mean, from slavery to apartheid, even this representative democracy that we got in 1994, right? There has been changes in the systems. However, always remain the same, though there have been these changes in how the system is operated and ran, right? So have you noticed that the freedom that was achieved in 1994 and any other freedom that was achieved before that is essentially incomplete freedom? So as the people, we seek true freedom, which is equal freedom, which will be explained a bit later, right? But we've also seen that because of the conditions that are prevailing in Africa, most people have given up on resistance, especially young people. You find young people now in the country, in South Africa. Even 1976 was better in terms of the conditions in which the masses live. It's a secret that life was better under apartheid than under the ANC government, because when the ANC government administration, I mean, those politicians have no intention whatsoever of building self-independence for Africa, and you'll get to understand as we move forward that self-independence and self-governance are quite significant in the struggle for liberation. So, I mean, even from the participation of young people today in politics, you can see that young people in Africa have just given up on resistance. Wow, are just comfortable now, waiting for 350s, and that is that. We have no other ambition of producing independently for ourselves, producing for export, but producing, I mean, we have all these resources that we could develop, right? But people are waiting for 350. So young people they've given up on resistance. Even if you look political participation in the country now, you seldom find young people participating in politics. That's why in Parliament, in the National Assembly, you find very old people there. You find a political party having an average age in the National Assembly of 59 years. And we expect that the majority of the country, which is the youth, will be represented. And that is the myth, however, of representative democracy. So obviously, if you look at the conditions now, I mean, a revolution is desirable. Everyone wants a revolution now, because if you look at the conditions, they allow for a revolution to start at any day in South Africa. But an important factor that needs to look at before we go into this revolution is the need for an alternative and futuristic thinking. Because we're not just going to say, wow, let's go confronting capital in Stellenbosch, let's go and throw stones there. With the same thinking, when people are still having the same thinking, that when they get to Stellenbosch, they must be given money and they take that money and go back home. So the revolution we desire requires a whole new thinking and action. So obviously the alternative way of thinking, we will offer it in this manifesto, as well as the alternative way of organizing society in such a way that we are able to achieve freedom from all forms of domination. So obviously in the 1900s, many African states declared their independence. And I think in 1994, South Africa was the last country, right, to declare independence. However, as a generation, we recognize that those freedoms, or rather those struggles, were largely based on ideas that maintain these very same systems of dominance, because there has not been any significant difference between a government of white people of the National Party and a government of the African National Congress. So the system of dominance has been maintained. I mean, even though people declare that they are free, right? So as a generation, we choose, of course, to fight to achieve equal freedom for all. We will elucidate on the concept of equal freedom for all, because equal freedom for all is unlike this freedom that we speak of, the representative democracy that is being celebrated as freedom. It is very, very far, actually, from freedom, right? However, obviously, where we are now in 2020, there has been advancements in science and technology which have assisted us to understand life better, right? To be able to interact with our surroundings better without causing much harm to our environment. So with the advancement of science and technology, we know that we can be able to offer anyone a healthy life of well-being. right? But as things stand now, we ought to alter human relations, because human beings are divided. It's not a matter of black and white only, or male and female. Even within black people, you have people divided along their tribes. Even you have people divided along their surnames. Even within their surnames, you have people divided along their mothers. So the division that is not necessary, as you will see where all these social ills emanate. So of course we are going to offer this new way of thinking to society, not for our sake, of course, but I mean, if we continue like this, even our children are going to suffer. I mean, I don't expect that the generation would want their children to grow the same way we grew. I mean, it is not pleasant at all, right? So, of course, human minds are locked in a matrix, and obviously we have taken a decision to unplug those minds from the matrix, because you know, when you are born, everything that you find in the world has been there, and you are going to die and leave it there. So what happens in between is quite, you are inside the matrix already. Your life is predetermined, and you will never have freedom, of course. But our aim is to assist everyone to escape from the matrix, and think in a way that is much more revolutionary and progressive. So that is, in short, the preamble to the founding manifesto of Us the People. The manifesto is public. You can be able to access it online. Right, before I go into the important terms that you need to understand, let me just briefly explain the logo of Us the People, because it was also one of the resolutions from the founding summit. So of course the logo of Us the People is a global map, right? And this global map, of course, represents our entire planet, which is under threat from greed, right? So the continents, if you look at the logo, they are colored in red and black, with the landmass surfaced by people, which represent us, the people of the world, especially those oppressed and exploited, right? And the black in the logo represents anti-authority or anti-authoritarianism. So around there's an ocean which is also black and has green matrix codes, right, as well as mathematical formulas representing the scientific methods of solving complex problems in our society. Because we are of the belief that the problem that we have now of the state and capital is complex to an extent that we really need science. I mean, I don't think we're going to overcome this problem with common sense, right? We are going to suffer more. That is why we offer mathematical formulas to solve very complex problems in our society. And on top, of course, is a gold star, which represents the sun that gives us energy, right? And obviously we are young and futuristic. We've been asked already, what's happening? Why don't you put the AK-47 on your logo? or put a bazooka or a okapi. But we cannot, we can't have spears and guns on our logo like we are in the 19th century or 20th century when people are still fighting wars physically, right? I mean, Africans have always been able to resist the colonialists when it came to fighting physically, right? The empires which were built in Africa in terms of war were quite advanced, and the colonizers saw that, and they took our minds, right? They saw that if we take their minds, that is how they're going to defeat us, right? So we're offering you your mind back, actually, when we say we want to offer an alternative way of thinking which will release you from all forms of oppression. So obviously, in our logo, we also have, we have science. There's representation of science, there's representation of freedom, there's representation of sound, there's representation of light, there's waves, there's vibrations, there's matter, there's energy. This t-shirt entirely represents life. And if I could, I would put off the light and see the t-shirt goes on itself. So it's quite an interesting logo which moves in the direction of liberation, and it's quite futuristic because it encourages young people to take back their minds instead of picking up guns or picking up blankets and going to fight. So the founding manifesto has 6 important terms which you need to understand clearly so that you thread easily through the manifesto. So the first term that we have identified is freedom. And freedom, according to us, is not subjective, but an objective and quite exactly definable concept when we are dealing with freedom in a social context. Because obviously humans are naturally social. No one can exist on their own. So within that social existence, there has to be freedom for everyone. However, in society, it's either my freedom is greater than yours, and this occurs at the expense of your freedom, obviously, or you have more freedom at my expense, right? And this is a state that we call unequal freedom. For example, a state of unequal freedom in South Africa, they say we are all free, but our freedom is not equal. There are those who are more free than others, which we'll use examples later to demonstrate, right? So in any case where I expand my freedom to take away someone's freedom, or where someone expands their freedom at my expense, no, that cannot be called freedom, because freedom only means equal freedom, which is essentially non-domination. No one gets to take away anyone else's freedom, right? Domination is also another term that is important in addition to freedom. And domination is what I've been speaking about now, which is a state of unequal freedom. At any given point where you have unequal freedom, then you'll know that you are being dominated. For example, right, our lives are being dominated by politicians who can be able to take decisions as to when you can go out of your house, when you can go where, what you can buy, what you must wear. So obviously they enjoy more privilege they enjoy more freedom than us as politicians. They don't even need to follow their own regulations. So already the freedom there is equal. So there is domination. The authority is obviously dominating over the people who have allowed it, right? So in a case where a freedom of someone is greater than the freedom of others and at their expense, that is a state of domination, which is something that we need to take ourselves, right? There's also a term which is important, and it's force. Force, not in terms of comrades loving to use the force, calling each force. No, is force is any physical or mental, right? Exercise in an aggressive way, right, which injures anyone else's freedom. That is force. So I think it's clear that the police, SANDF, and organs of the state, they use force, right? Using society in an aggressive way to move in a particular direction. They might coerce society physically or mentally, but that is force to be physical force, but there's also mental cohesion as part of the forces, freedom of others. Metaphysics. Metaphysics, well, obviously comprises of all concepts and doctrines which go beyond or are unlogically graspable, right? Therefore, concepts or doctrines cannot be proven as true or false, right? I mean, when something cannot be proven with the standards of our experienced reality, then we can just dismiss it anyhow, right? I think there are many ideas which have been dominant in our society, which are just metaphysical and we need to deal with. Which brings me to the next definition, which is ideologies. Well, in preparation, of course, to launch the movement, we had before interacted with various ideologies, all of them actually, political ideologies, social theories from throughout the globe, right? We looked at which political ideology to freedom and complete freedom, not just a cosmetic freedom. So we interacted with various ideologies. However, there's no particular ideology that we identify ourselves with. Besides that, we are people, and we are claiming that humanity that has been taken away from us. It's called Ubuntu or Boto, right, in Africa. And I think with colonization, that has been destroyed and has also taken away the identity of the African, because they've been fed Western ideologies, ideologies from Asia, and which are entirely not relevant in Africa. So we do not particularly identify with any ideology like Marxism, Leninism. I think it's ideologies, those things, or it's names of people. Fanonianism and all these ideologies that you can name. I think the most important thing in respect to our principles is that we are people and we all want to be free, right? So we will lastly, the last term is democracy, which see, democracy is not something that has existed anciently. It's something that is new, right? We had other forms of organizing society. However, democracy is the idea that submits the interests of individuals in society to politicians, right? We give politicians the responsibility to represent us and to take care of our interests. That is, in short, democracy, right? Where we even have people celebrating democracy and saying, no, the people are in charge, right? We'll also learn that democracy is the which sustains domination in society, because already democracy presupposes an unequal. When we, like in South Africa, in 1994, when we got the democracy, people who were choosing who's them. It is not necessary. There are people who will always be advantaged, and there are people who will always be disadvantaged in a system of democracy, whether they're advantaged by education, by money, by anything else. But there can never be equality, because democracy is designed to sustain that order of inequality. So just to go into the introduction of the manifesto, like we said, it obviously offers thinking, right, which is necessary for us, the people, to destroy all exploitative and oppressive structures, right, so that we can be able to lay a basis for order, which is devoid from all these ideologies that have not worked, right? So we have realized that as long as the thinking of people has not changed, a new social order will be impossible, right? Even if you protest every day and you walk from here to America, as long as the thinking of people has not changed, the social order will not change. People will go back to their townships, and the society will maintain itself under the conditions of inequality if change the way they think, right? So obviously we come before you as the people just to present our principles, right? And there's also a clear program on exactly what needs to be done, which we'll touch on towards the end of the discussion, right? So the human race, if you look at humans throughout history, humans are the only species in the world that has expressed some form of aggression towards their own, right? We are the only species where you'll find humans enslaving each other, and you'll never find a dog killing a dog or enslaving a dog or any other animal for that matter, right? As a species. So humans are the only species, right, that expresses some form of aggression towards their own, right? And throughout modern history, there has existed two groups, I think, in most societies, if not all, right? These groups are divided into those who work for others and the privileged few, right? So there has been uprisings before and protests. Social institutions have changed, as we have mentioned, that we moved from various systems of organizing society from monarchs, apartheid, to this representative democracy, right? So with these changes, even the form of denomination has changed. That is the money, how we trade has also changed. A lot of things have changed, right, throughout time. However, we've also had some few people who were part of the oppressed and exploited people. It's only few who have managed to emancipate themselves, right, and be welcomed by the ruling class. Conditions of the masses in general, everyone who is oppressed, the conditions have degenerated. And if you look at the way things are now, the ruling class are enjoying more freedom than before, right? So they are monopolizing this freedom more and more as we think that we're getting more free, right? So I mean the ruling class in South Africa, we speak of the ruling elite, right, and the comprador bourgeoisie, which emerged after 1994 through negotiations and people being donated shares, right? So these are the people who are currently enjoying freedom in South Africa right now. That privileged few that has always held that privilege, and those few comprador politicians who were able to negotiate deals for themselves and their families, right? So prior to the establishment, to the abolishment of slavery, it has always been known that even after slavery, society will be divided into two groups of people, right? Which is those who work for others and those who live by the work of others, right? Those are the ones that own the means of production, they own the land, they basically don't have to do anything in society to make a living. As long as you rent on their land, they are going to get money every month without doing anything, right? So there are those who rent out the land, and there are those who rent the land. And well, obviously those who have the means of production now, they have the means of production at the expense of the freedom of everyone else who is poor, right? So these people the ruling class, they've managed to convince the oppressed that this is the freedom that you need, and here you are free. But people have not really understood what is it to be free, right? Some are saying that they want economic freedom, some they want social freedom, some are saying that they want political freedom, some are saying that they want all forms of all types of freedom that people are looking for in the world, right? But the most significant thing is that freedom should be equal for everyone. Economic freedom, and there's someone who is more free than another at the expense of others. So I think that is an important principle that we have established, that freedom is only freedom if it's equal freedom. So furthermore, there have been let me call them superstitious concepts, right, that have manifested as people were trying to understand themselves and how they interact with nature, right? These are superstitions that and have enslaved people historically, right? They've even built prejudices amongst society that particular people are like this, and those prejudices are still maintained to this day, right? So even there are some people who someone can go to school and come back and still be prejudiced. So obviously, when you are anyone who is prejudiced, their understanding of something is essentially determined before they even receive the information on the subject, right? So the personal experience of that individual no longer plays a part, right, insofar as supporting the judgment on the matter. What matters is only the prior perception, right? So this has made people to even reject science and reject reason. I mean, people even reject reality. They can even propagate issues that are not there, right? If you look at the stereotype that has been put in the people in South Africa, there's a particular stereotype that men are taking women, for example, right? But that is just a stereotype. That is why people who have that stereotype will never even want to accept that no, there's more men who die because of violence than women. So the issue of violence in our society is not gender-based, but what we are fighting is the authority that gives someone that power to exercise violence, right? So stereotypes generally they are backward, and they make someone to become backward in their thinking, right? So obviously us, we appeal to reason. I mean, we don't take anything from anywhere else other than reality and our surroundings. There's no idea that we take from a German philosopher or some Russian revolutionary or anyone else besides our surroundings and our reality. So as we see now the reality around us, the fact of the matter is that the misery of our people is increasing year by year, right? And this leaves us with an inevitable determination that obviously you can free yourself and free your mind as an individual. However, we need to be organized, right, in society, and to approach the struggle in an organized manner. We are not just organizing ourselves because we felt that no, we wanted to be a group that will push a particular program, but even our organization will no longer be necessary when we reach to a point where the state has fallen and capital has fallen. Then we don't need to organize ourselves to educate society about an alternative way of thinking, because that would have been achieved, right? So we formed an organization, yes, and it's a political organization. However, it rises from the conscience that for a certain purpose, cooperation of several forces is necessary, right? So, like I said, when this purpose has been achieved, the necessity of cooperation then ceases, right? Then each force resumes its previous independence, ready to cooperate societal issue, right? We need to be individuals. However, cooperation is something that we can't live without as humans, because I think if you look at the development of Western civilization, they've emphasized more on competition rather than cooperation. And that is one of the reasons that we have people today who are so greedy and are willing to do anything in competition, right? So this organization is obviously necessary because it envisages, freedom for all, right? We don't speak of saying that we want to take land from these people and they must go, or we want to remove these people and replace them, right? Or we want to take away capital from those who own it today. However, we are basically appealing to everyone, because liberation is not a matter of those who are poor only. Even the rich, the oppressors, they need to be liberated as well. Because as long as they think the way they think, then they'll never allow poor people to experience freedom. So we need to free them as well, because wealthy people are not entirely free. Not entirely, they are not free at all, right? We spoke of various forms of freedom, and if you look, they can be economically free and be able to do anything. However, socially, if you look, they might not be free, if they are not free at all. Most of wealthy people, socially, they are not free. They do not interact with society. They are not free in society. When they walk around, they are followed by bodyguards. When we have even leaders who can go to their own constituency with more bodyguards than the people who are there. So that shows that even if you can have economic freedom, social freedom is also very important. Patrice Motsepe can't just walk here in Braamfontein. People are going to mug him and ask him for money and even more him. So in our society, he cannot be able to exist because us who are not free, and we know that we are not free. He's part of the reasons why we are not free. So even him, he'll never be free until we are free. So we speak of freedom that liberates not only the oppressed, but as well as those who are perpetuating this domination over humans. Because essentially they cannot be true humanity and true self-respect. Self-reliance is something of utmost significance. If you don't rely on yourself, then I don't know, no one can help ourselves, right? And obviously from our organization, as the is to do anything for anyone, right? We do not even want anything from anyone, right? We just appeal with everyone to exercise cooperation, so that we can be able to bring a state of society where freedom and well-being will be possible, right, for everyone. And well, as this introduction goes to a conclusion, it just explains that the Manifesto launches a critical attack on prevalent stereotype ideas, as well as the nature of the state. In 2 of the Manifesto, that is where we critique the state. I think in the next discussion, that is where we'll be speaking about the state, representative democracy, as well as the limitations of Marxism, right, with his dictatorship of the proletariat, right? So presents a new thought process and ways necessary for emancipation, as well as a concrete suggestions for the realization of equal freedom for all. The manifesto at at chapter 4, that is where equal freedom for all is actually put clearly as one of the main principles that we need to achieve freedom, right? So equal freedom is also explained there, but it will also be looked at in the next discussion as well, right? So obviously, as the people, in addition to destroying the state monopolies, we advocate for a resource-based economy. That is explained in chapter 5, I think in chapter 6 of the manifesto, where we deal with money and resources. And it is clearly established that we advocate for a resource-based economy which uses resources rather than money, right? And people have access to whatever they need without the use of money or credit or rent, right? So even if money today, the money that we have on us, if they say that this money exists, they say the rent is cancelled tomorrow when we wake up, the way that the authority has power to do anything they want. We can wake up tomorrow and they say the rent is cancelled. There's no longer money. Are we not going to be able to live? We'll be able to get access to all the resources that are on earth. Money is just being used as a hindrance to control access of resources, right? We can have people who are sitting on top of resources that are being mined by people from elsewhere, right? But because they don't have money, those people live the most miserable life, right? When they are gifted with resources and they have access to those resources. Though money is actually something that is, it was obviously introduced with the capitalist system, right? And it has even developed to a point today where we're moving to a cashless society. But the fact of the matter is that if all the money in the world today disappeared, as long as we have the soil, as long as we have the water, as long as we have the factories and any other resource that were gifted by nature, we can be able to do anything, can be able to build anything, we can be able to provide for any of our needs as people, right? So the bottom line is that money is not what people need. Rather, people need access to the necessity. Right, so I think for today, that is where we will take a pause before we will be discussing the rest of the manifesto in the coming discussions. Right, but I think that almost everything that is of significance in respect to the important terms, as well as the introduction to the new thoughts that are necessary for a new society, right? So we have asked for critique of our ideas that we present in this manifesto, right? We have asked for critique from politicians, from legislators, from everyone, right? And they obviously resonate with the principle of equal freedom, because once you understand equal freedom, you'll be able to see that what we are living is actually a lie disguised as freedom, right? So before we close, it is important that we just answer these few questions which had been asked before we started, right? These are actually frequently asked questions about us, the people, they ask whether As the People is a political party. And yes, As the People is a political party registered with the IEC of South Africa in terms of the Electoral Act. They also ask if as the yes, we do, and we'll be contesting elections even next year. We are hoping that the coalition of ANC and EFF is not successful in postponing the elections, so that we can be able to take those municipalities and give them scene where municipalities have dismally failed people, and people have provided services for themselves, even though the people still those municipalities, the people in the municipality, they take that tax, they invest it in some bank and steal the money, people's tax, while people don't have roads, people don't have houses, people don't have water, which are basic needs. And people are doing those things for themselves now. They are no longer. So why are people paying taxes to the municipality if the municipality cannot deliver? People can actually be able to self-govern. There are examples of communities where they put their own roads, put their own electricity, they fix their own potholes. So it's a matter of, actually, according to South African law, these communities, everything they do from their own money, they can be able to claim from the tax, right? But why do we pay tax? Because we even suggested at the start of the lockdown as a movement that the government, the entire tax in the fiscus, so that we can be fine in this lockdown. Now people are crying for 350, right? But they've been paying tax since they were born. But they are going to be given 350. And if all the tax that we give to the government, they could give us and pay us all our taxes, we're going to be fine. There was no one who's going to be hungry, because when you are hungry, you must know that your tax is feeding the politician and his family or her family, right? So it's very important that people must learn self-governance. You don't need anyone to take care of your basic interests. And let me tell you, there's no one who will come from a National Assembly advocating for issues of a particular community, because once you go to the National Assembly or any other form of legislature, you can never know the needs of all the people. You can never be able to satisfy the needs of all the people. It's only the people who know what they need, and it's only the people who can provide that for themselves. So instead of paying these taxes to the government, people must organize themselves and do things on their own. Can build schools. There are many communities where government have failed. The communities have built a lot of things, right? And it shows the significance of self-governance, not only in government, but as well as in business. Self-reliance is quite important, because if you look at Africa and South Africa now, we've been able to be, we are captured with food, right? We are not self-reliant, right? Our food that we eat comes from a shop, right? We saw people saying they are going to protest against Rupert and Stellenbosch Mafia, but they buy blankets at and they eat tiger brands on their way to fight in Stellenbosch. So they've captured us with food, right? That is the self-reliance we need. So we've seen in history where people have taken factories. I mean, if you look at unions, how they operate, right? Unions just want to negotiate salary. But the real struggle that we speak of, that us the workers speak of, is a struggle where workers take charge of the factories, workers take charge of the farms, workers take charge of their workplaces. And when such happens, production will increase, and we will never have such things. I mean, if you look at a stock fair, right, that is efficiently run from any township of old people or young people, a stock fair is equal contribution, and at the end we get equal output, right? That is socialism, that is equality in practice, right? We don't need to see equality or socialism in a national level. We are able to see equality and socialism even at smaller scale, where people are able to share resources equally, right? So the distribution of resources in our society is, people must be able to own the means of production and produce for themselves, to sustain themselves, as well as produce to export to other foreign lands which are not gifted like our land, right? So there's also a question that okay, who is the leader of us the people? I think that one we answered earlier. The national task team, right, of us the people is led by Matole. It's in Sholos, right? And us the students is led by Tabang, right? And we have explained that leadership in us is responsibility based, right, rather than based on authority or centralization or some form of absolutism. We saw that in an absolutist system, a leader can come and want to change a decision that was made by a majority of people democratically. So there is not that authoritative leadership that is also hierarchical and vertical in structure in us the people. However, we have a lot of activists that have taken various responsibilities to advance the struggle for equal freedom, right? And our organization is largely based on teaching. We don't even identify ourselves as leaders, or no, this is a leader, but we're rather teachers of society, where we come to society with an alternative way of thinking, as well as an alternative way of organizing, right? And the fourth question is, how does one join us the people? Membership of us the people, as the students and as the workers, is available online, all right? So we can visit the website and be able to get access to any information you need, as well as join the organization. The link will be posted again after the live discussion, where you can be able to join us the people, or us the students, or us the workers for free, right? And we have established quite an efficient membership system, which actually gives us reports. We'll show you this report here that shows since March the number of people cumulatively who have joined, and even coronavirus is not increasing like this. So another question is us the people an anarchist movement? Well, we have said before that there's not a particular ideology which we identify ourselves with, rather than equality, which is socialism, right? Is equal ownership of the means of production and equal distribution of resources, right? So we're not anarchists. However, we are against all forms of oppression and exploitation, right? And those have been obviously anarchist struggles in Europe and elsewhere in the world. where we've had anarchists participating in popular struggle. We've seen them taking an approach which is contrary to ours, right? Because we were largely based on changing the mentality of society. Because even, who's this? One of the Queen, Steve Biko, he said that, I mean, the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed, right? So we are trying to give you your mind as a weapon to use it to liberate yourself, because money will never liberate you, a gun will never liberate you. As long as your mind is locked in the matrix of dominance, you will never be liberated, right? That is why we have today leaders who speak of freedom, but themselves they have that desire to dominate over others. Themselves they have that desire to replace the current dominators, to replace the current ruling class and ruling elite, like we've seen in what is this, the Bolshevik struggle, Chairman Mao in China, everywhere actually. That takes an approach where they replace one form of authority with another. We'll always have such, right? And the people, contrary to Marx's theory of the dictatorship of the proletariat, it can never happen that the political elite, they entirely give power to the masses in the nature that Karl Marx proposes, right? So it has failed. I mean, we've seen that it has failed. So we must not even have that desire to say that we can do better than Ramaphosa, or we can do better than Zuma, or we can do better than Thabo Mbeki. You can change people every day, can change leaders every day, but you will never find that leader who will satisfy everyone. Any leader will satisfy themselves and their family, because you can't serve 50, 60 million people if your family is not fine, right? That is human nature. That is why everyone must be able to not depend on anyone else and liberate themselves, right? There is a question again, is us the people anti-religion? Well, we are not anti-religion as a practice or idea, right? I mean, even when we get to a point where people understand the message of equal freedom, and they understand that the state is not necessary, and they understand that they need to own the means of production on their own, we will not bring an end to faith. I mean, anyone can continue with their faith as long as everyone enjoys equal freedom, right? Your Christianity or your any other religion must not interfere with the freedom of others. And for as long as we are all free, you can be free to worship anyone anytime, right? But ours is only freedom, right? We will have free will everyone will have free will, of course, in a society where there's freedom. And when you have free will, you can be a Muslim, you can be anything, right? The most important thing is that in exercising that free will, you must know that there is a limit, right? And that is how you'll be able to enjoy exercising that will. Because once you get into the sphere of freedom of others, then it becomes something else, right? So in the next discussion, we'll also speak of the the inspiration of us, the students. There's a question that where does us, the people, get inspiration? I remember, I think it's last week, where we spoke to African perspectives. We indicated that the 1976 generation is were not inspired by the 1976 generation, to put it simple, because we identify them as the generation that was fighting on behalf of the Queen against the Afrikaners, right? So really, they could protest every day, like anyone who's protesting today, as long as the state remains, as well as capital. There will never be any form of change in society. So lastly, in conclusion, we're in a period now, right, where they say there is a global pandemic, right? And this is where we see domination manifesting itself, right, at the highest proportions. So obviously, belief in authority, if you believe and submit to any authority, that is where your misery will start. I mean, in our society, that is the misery of our society actually originates from people believing in and submitting to authority, right? So we recommend a struggle that will pursue the death of all authority, whether as a physical force like the state, or whether as the laws which are not physical. The state as a product of ages of ignorance and superstition must be abolished, right? Another important thing is that for as long as we still have the state and capital, you must understand the origin of capitalism, right? Where it starts, and you must understand what it manifests in society, right? People like to protest, but they are protesting the symptoms of capitalism, right? They protest against racism, protest against patriarchy, protest against any other social ill that you can protest against, right? You can protest the whole year. For as long as capital and the state are there will not be any significance. So that is what we have realized, right? That capital has manifested itself as things like tribalism, and there's one thing which has been taught to us since we were young, that is submission to the state and the rich. You know how people are taught to submit to the rich, or to submit to police, or to submit anyone in authority. So that is something that needs to change. I mean, we cannot raise the next generations with that mentality that they need to submit to the rich and authority, because under this pandemic, it is obviously the pandemic is now accompanied by changes in the global system which are not even medical, right? I mean, the most significant impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, I think, in the global system of imperialism has been on economy and how we socialize, right? But in terms of mortality, in terms of health, there's not been any significant growth or change. If you look at the number of people who were dying last year and the number of people who are dying this year, right? So this pandemic, we see it as a hoax that is largely being used to change how we live. I mean, in short, to introduce the new world order, right, which can be summarized as it's an advanced stage of imperialism. That is where we'll have serious changes like a global system, a global government, one global government with a single global currency, which is going to be electronic. Right? They even say in South Korea that is digital money. Right? I mean, there's also going to be increased technological testing, tracking, monitoring, and surveillance of people. I think it's already happening now. That if the state can come to you today and ask you who are you with today, or they can even access your phone, right? They even choose which information you are able to get. So they control basically your perceptions, right? And the pandemic is being used as an excuse for that, right? And this is, I mean, what we have seen throughout the world is just the governments becoming increasingly authoritative, even introducing draconian measures, right, where power is centralized. And obviously another thing that is going to happen is automation of production and technocracy. We are seeing now people are losing jobs everywhere, right? Everywhere people are losing jobs. And automation of production is an important factor which I think we'll need to address as well. We do address technology and automation in chapter 6 of the manifesto, right? So we'll go through it in the next discussion. So now they are claiming that these regulations that they have made, they are in the interest of the public, right? They are taking decisions looking at prioritizing our health. I mean, a government that has allowed people to live in poverty, people to eat food that make them obese and diabetes. Today, all of a sudden, they care about everyone's health, right? And they want to protect everyone. And with this message, we have seen that, they've even asking for action from government, right? They are offering themselves to government to say, no, dominate over us, exercise your authority over us, in terms of being protected from some virus. We'll not go into the medical component of the virus because it will be something else. But I mean, you can see that this pandemic is actually creating the necessary circumstances of fear, right, which will justify any solution that the government proposes, right? So this submission to authority, it has gotten to a point where even perceptions of members of the public are controlled by government, right? Obviously, when they control your perception of a particular problem, any solution that they propose, you are going to accept it, right? Because your understanding of the problem comes from their perception and even the offered by them, right? So that is why we see, if you can post on Facebook anything that contradicts the message of the World Health Organization or government in respect to the COVID-19, they say even the state can arrest you, right? You can be arrested for merely sharing your own perspective. So this is the fear that they are putting in people so that they can accept any solution that is offered by the government, right? So obviously an important thing in life in general, in this coronavirus flu, right? We heard Donald Trump saying it's a kung flu. Yeah. So in restoring health in our society, we encourage people to strengthen their immune systems. And I mean, it has been indicated that the virus is mostly harmful to those with weak immune systems, right? So you need to strengthen your immune system, you need to take nutrients that boost your thyroid function. And that's, I mean, I don't think it's that easy to be killed by COVID-19, right? So to combat the pandemic, like we've suggested before, the government should really return all citizens' taxes so that it can be possible for everyone to survive under this lockdown distress. I mean, if you look at small businesses, they've entirely been destroyed, right? Even the various industries have been entirely destroyed, right? So the government should be able to, I mean, it's not only this 500 billion of Bill Gates that is there. The government actually has their own fiscals, right, that they need to refund to all citizens so that everyone can be able to take care of themselves at this time of distress. However, we need to start thinking of a post-coronavirus era, right? And I think this pandemic has presented us with an opportunity to either submit to authority, to submit to imperialism, to submit to the state, and to submit to capital, right? Or we take this as an opportunity to build a society of non-domination and equal freedom. It will obviously depend on every individual's understanding of freedom to make that decision, as we are at a point now where everyone, I think, need to really make that decision that it's either they submit or they join the struggle for freedom. Thank you.